Brilliant. So hello everybody, warm welcome. My name's Will Sibley. I'm one of the account executives at LandApp and very pleased to be hosting this webinar for you today. Usually our Director of Growth and UK lead, Dan Gira, leads these webinars. Have no fear, Dan is still here, but working in the background and is going to be supporting me throughout the webinar and through Q&A. But myself, I've been at LandApp for about 9 months now, previously come from a farm environment role. And since then, I've spoken to so many different users of LandApp, which has been a total joy and such a range of different industries and use cases. So hopefully that resonates in the audience today. Um, Today's focus is going to be on Ordnance Survey data, and we'll be looking at the different data sets and features within LandApp. I think the key outcomes that we want to get from this is for you to feel much more confident in using OS data, how to access it in LandApp, and then use that to ultimately improve your mapping experience. So we'll do that by going through a little whistle-stop tour and a showcase of the different Ordnance Survey features that are available. So hope you enjoy. Just to go through a little bit of housekeeping before we start. So we are recording this webinar and your cameras and microphones will be turned off. But that doesn't mean to say we don't want to hear from you. We've saved a lot of time at the end for a Q&A session, and you can actually submit your questions through the Q&A function, which should be somewhere at the bottom of your Zoom screen there. So we save a good amount of time for some interaction. We should finish that at around 1:45, but if you do want to stick around, myself and Dan will be here till 1 p.m. So if you do want to have a chat, informal chat at the end, you're very welcome to do so. If you do need to jump us off at 1:45, do that too. And as usual, we'll record this webinar and then share the recording with all the attendees. And then as well, we'll upload this to our YouTube channel in the next 3 to 5 days, depending on how busy our marketing team are. And then we also have a post-webinar survey at the end when you exit, and we'll be really grateful if you could complete that post-webinar survey just to give us some feedback on how these are all going. So that would be brilliant. And then just to go through the agenda. For a start on this, actually, we want to emphasize we really want to hear from you. We've got a new webinar strategy at LandApp where we'll be delivering more kind of themed webinars with guest speakers. And last week we had a really good one on data power decisions and some top guests speaking about their different use cases. And then also these more kind of demo webinars in conjunction with that, where we go into a bit more of a deep dive into the actual technical aspects of LandApp. So again, really keen for feedback, and we're always wanting to improve our tool based on user feedback. So yeah, I do encourage you to share your questions in the Q&A. Just to go through the agenda, so doing the welcome and housekeeping now, I'm just going to touch on a couple of upcoming events. We are getting into event season very soon, so I'll just share a few of different places we'll be this summer and a couple of the new product updates in LandApp that will be interest to you. And then we'll get right into the Ordnance Survey data tools. I'll share a bit about what Ordnance Survey is and our relationship with them. And then for about 25 minutes, we'll go through a live demo and I'll show through that. So yeah, look forward to sharing this with you. As always, we will record this. We are recording this and we'll upload to our YouTube channel. This is a great resource to look for different themes and previous webinars where we've covered certain areas within LandApp. And it's a great resource if you're at a more learning stage or you want to refresh yourself on different workflows, especially in one foul swoop. And you can, within an hour, just learn a whole workflow step by step and just complete that all in one and then be much more prepared and confident to go through that. So it's a great resource. You see a few examples there. We've covered stewardship and the different funding tools that were within LandApp, things like biodiversity net gain, top tips, saving hacks, things like that, which is really useful and for our users, and that's open to everyone. So please do take a look. Speaking of those events then, so we've highlighted three here. The first being the National Silver Lapwing Awards, led by the FWAG Association, that's Farming and Wildlife Advisory Group, and they're hosting the annual National Silver Lapwing Award on the Isle of Man in June. And this is really an award to showcase brilliant, inspirational farmers out there who are not only running working farms, but they're also doing that in conjunction with sound environmental management and ecological improvement. So it's a fantastic event to join if you can make it, but we will be there sponsoring. And do look out for those amazing farmers that are involved in that award. Secondly, the Groundswell Regenerative Agricultural Festival. Whilst we're not sponsoring, we do have a stand, which is very exciting for the Land Up team, and there'll be a whole motley gang of us there, and we'd really like to engage with as many people as we can at that event. We're stand F27, which I believe is right opposite the Earthworm Arms. So I don't know whether that's a good position or not, but we will be there and very keen to chat with anybody who's at that event. And if you are going in the audience, please do look out for us. And then lastly, the Agroforestry Show in September. Again, a very fantastic event led by the Soil Association and Woodland Trust, focusing on agroforestry. This one tool within the land manager's toolkit to really not only run working farms well, but also improve environmental management, look at things like carbon storage and biodiversity that comes from trees on farms, which is a great showcase of that method too at that show. So again, if you are joining, we'd love to see you there. A couple of recent product updates. So the first on the left, a very sought after and requested feature within Land App. We've got drag to select. And you see that little video there of how you can do that. Just to drag across your screen and you'll select all the parcels that's on your map, which is, yeah, going to save a lot of time. I think you can do that currently with holding the shift button, but with this new feature, you can now drag. And I'll try and show that within the demo because it's quite an exciting one. Then secondly, we recently made some big improvements into our Land App mobile feature. So you can map out in the field remotely. That uses GPS, so you don't need signal. You can carry out surveys. You can take photos and they'll drop exactly where you took that photo. So for things like surveys and evidencing, that's a really powerful tool. And that's available to our standard or professional subscribers. So in the free, you won't be able to access this, but please do encourage you to upgrade if you do want to access this really useful feature within Land App now. Great. Getting on now to Ordnance Survey itself. So I think the purpose of this, it really follows on from the webinar that we did last week around data-powered decisions in land management, highlighting the importance of data as a basis in making our decisions. And we heard from some excellent guests, including Sophie Coley from Ordnance Survey, who shared her take on the importance of data from her point of view, as well as shared a few exciting updates and recent improvements from Ordnance Survey, which was brilliant. And we also recognise, based on customer feedback, that the data and tools from OS aren't fully understood as they could be, hence why we're focusing on that today. What is OS? If you don't know, I'm assuming a lot of people do, but in case you don't, Ordnance Survey, they're the National Mapping Agency of Great Britain. So they cover geographical data in England, Wales, and Scotland, not Northern Ireland currently, but they're one of the most well-respected mapping organisations in the world, and they provide really detailed, accurate, and up-to-date geographic data in Great Britain. So extremely powerful. They're a public body, so they're government-owned. They're a trading body owned by or controlled by the UK government, operating under the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology, DSIT, and their role mainly is to produce, maintain, and provide detailed geographic data of maps used for a range of different purposes. So looking at navigation, planning, especially environmental management, emergency services, you name it. So it's fantastic, and we want our users to have access to that. And we're an OS partner. So Ordnance Survey don't sell all OS data themselves. They do this through a partner network, and these are all third-party companies that sell Ordnance Survey data, and LandApp is one of those, and we're very proud to do that. So our users can be very confident that the data that they're using and have access to is accurate and authoritative and can be used as that kind of source of truth as the basis of all the following mapping that they do in LandApp. All OS data can be accessed by all LandApp users, irrespective of what subscription you're in. So you can be in the free version of LandApp as well as standard professional. You still have access to these and can purchase them. There is pricing associated with some of these data and features, which we will cover, but they can also all be purchased in-app. If you are a PSGA member, that's the Public Sector Geospatial Agreement. So any councils, any arm's length bodies that are in the room, you can link that membership to your LandApp account and access all of this data for free. And we're very happy to help with that. So I think Dan's going to pop in a link around information on that in the chat. If you are from a public body organization, please let us know because we can help you with that. Um, Great. I think I've covered everything there. But again, if you've got any more questions about Ordnance Survey, please do put them in the Q&A. And then for the demo itself, so we'll be covering different features that are available within LandApp, starting with Ordnance Survey base maps and Ordnance Survey data layers. So these are live interactive data sets within LandApp. In terms of the base maps, that's basically the background that you see when you're mapping. And we'll go through three different types in the demo, and they say freemium against there on that list, which I will explain. And then also data layers, which are mostly all open source. They're freely available at different data sets from Ordnance Survey that we've built in to LandApp. And then this will eventually end in a nice, clean, professional looking print, which we'll produce together in the demo. In conjunction with that, we'll be looking at two different what we call data downloads. So these are basically premium data sets that you can purchase in LandApp, starting with the Ordnance Survey field boundaries. So this data set covers both rural and moorland areas across Great Britain and identifies the nature of the field boundary features on your map. And that goes for vegetative as well as man-made features, so hedgerows and stone walls captured through the automated process from Ordnance Survey. So that covers Earth observation, aerial imagery, and field surveys too. And within this data set, you can actually see the different heights and widths of different field boundaries, which is a really powerful piece of data to have. And of course, you can use this kind of thing for things like biodiversity net gain, assessing and understanding the land for that, or maybe also agri-environment schemes and other natural capital assessments, the way you've got to monitor different features and also plan things like wildlife corridors and pollinator networks. This data set is really useful for that. And then secondly, we'll look at the Ordnance Survey Master Map, which is really Ordnance Survey's kind of flagship data set of Great Britain. And this is the most detailed digital map, essentially, you can get, used by lots of different professionals in things like planning, surveying, land management. And it's really kind of that gold standard of location data. I think there's over 500 million different features within this data set. So it's really, really detailed, covering you name it, things like ponds, woodlands, roads, agricultural land. So pretty fantastic. And again, we're really proud to have this available in LandApp. So we'll go through that too. Great for making all sorts of decisions. Okay, I've whizzed through that. We can get stuck in right into a demonstration now. I'll just open my Land App account and how we do for times. 12:15. Next 20 minutes or so, we'll be working through a demo. So I'll start on my main maps dashboard where I am now and create a new map. Let's call it OS webinar demo. I'll assign it to a team. Let's just go farming, the region UK. And this will open my map up for me. As a default, as always, I'll be taken to slap bang in the middle of the country using this base map here, OpenStreetMap, which you can see as your background. So usually in any demo, we'd start by identifying or defining our map boundary. We won't start that just yet. We'll first go to the base maps that I touched on, as well as the data layers, just to show you those Ordnance Survey features there. So I'll just zoom in. Actually, we'll go to a place, we'll go to Charlbury, which is actually the town that I grew up in Oxfordshire. And if you've ever been or want to go, it's a beautiful place. And then we'll look at our base maps up here. So we'll see Ordnance Survey as one option. This is kind of the main Ordnance Survey base map. And you can see a really good level of detail and quite interactive aspects to it all, as well as contour lines as well, which is quite useful. And I can zoom in a bit more and it will actually render different details as I'm zooming in, like so. We've got a second version, which is Ordnance Survey Light, which is basically the same thing, just in a lighter color and without those contour lines. So if you do prefer this kind of less color saturated view, this is a good option for you. And rest assured, you'll be seeing the same level of detail. And then thirdly, we have Ordnance Survey Leisure, which, if there are any ramblers in the room like me, you'll be familiar with this kind of layout that you'd see in those paper maps that you'd have when walking about, which obviously is given this great level of detail as well as contour lines in this quite older looking format. I know that some ecologists prefer to use this, and sometimes when estates or farms are printing off maps that they put up on a board on their public rights of way to show to the public, this is a great option. And impressive as it is, I think we won't focus on this as much in the demo, and we'll focus on these two here. Just to explain the structure of these base maps, and you'll see at the bottom there, we've got this zoom level is 8, which is free. And what you're seeing here is actually Ordnance Survey open data. But if I zoom in, that zoom level, which is 10, is premium. So what this has actually changed to is the Ordnance Survey master map, but in raster form. Without going into much of the weeds, raster basically means it's a 2D format, and I can't click on any of these shapes or polygons on my map. It's just a blanket 2D image, basically. But the detail that I can get from these zoom levels are really accurate. We've got things like labels of buildings and areas, the actual breakdown of things like buildings and roads themselves, things like rivers that are flowing as well, bridges. You can just get from this, seeing this, it's a really detailed and useful thing to see for enhancing your mapping experience. In terms of how these credits work, the more I move my map at this zoom level and the more that I zoom in, that basically uses up more credits. OS credits is what we call them, and there's a cost to moving this map at this level. There's a whole maths behind how those credits are calculated, but we have actually got a page on our subscription page in your account page of where you can view how many credits you have under this usage section here, Ordnance Survey credits, and I've got 0 remaining in our account. And if I want to top up those credits, I can click this button here, Bio Ordnance Survey credits, and we've actually given a breakdown of the different costs and what they'll get you, every user, when they do sign up, gets 30,000 credits for free. But if I did need to top up, I can do it with this method. And we've actually given a little indicator of how much usage is worth an amount of credits. Although the caveat, it is really difficult for us to work that out. It depends on where geographically you are and how much you're using it. But it's good to share that with you now. It's worth also mentioning that if you are an Ordnance Survey Data Hub member, that means you're on a specific subscription with Ordnance Survey, you can actually link that account in a standard or professional subscription in LandApp with your LandApp account too. And that would mean you would receive, I think it's £1,000 worth of Ordnance Survey credits per month, which is basically unlimited. So you can actually link that to your account there, and you wouldn't have to worry about using up Ordnance Survey credits if you do choose to use those base maps. And then also that goes the same for the public sector geospatial agreement members that have linked their accounts to LandApp too. You can view all that data for free effectively. Going back to our map now, we'll go back to Chalbury. We'll next look at the data layers that I mentioned. And to access those, they're at the top here on your top right under data layers. And there's a whole different range of basically data sets that we have built into LandApp that you can overlay onto this background that you're seeing, which, yeah, there's I think over 21 different data sets now. We have a really good method of um, incorporating different data sets now. And so if you do have different requests of data layers that aren't necessarily there, please do let us know because we can share those with our data engineers. They can check where those data sets are and how they're built, and we can incorporate them pretty quickly. So if you do, as you're mapping, spot any that aren't there, please do let us know. Going to the Ordnance Survey data layers, we've actually grouped these into one section here under Ordnance Survey. And we've got things like OS grid reference and OS grid reference labels. So if you do want to map with these different references, you can do so by turning those on. And I can actually click on one of those and copy it to a plan if I wanted to and work on that area. Other data layers worth showing is open rivers, which I quite like. So this will actually show the network of different rivers, canals, which are in blue, I believe, if you can see those. Which here we've got Oxford Canal and different data points from that object there on the map. And we've got here in Chalbury, the River Evenlode, which is my local river. And we can click on that too. And again, different data sets there, which is a really useful thing to turn on. Maybe it's a bit more defined than what you'd get from looking at just the Ordnance Survey base map there. I quite like to show an example here of another Ordnance Survey base map with contour lines, turning that on. Just again, a much more defined view of the different contour lines on LandApp, and also turning on flood zones in conjunction with that. And you can use these data layers just to analyze how how the map or how the area is built up. And in this case, you could apply it to a planning scenario. If I was looking at planning in this area, I can see this flood zone here against the Evenlode, and these contour lines as well, which are quite far apart, meaning it's quite flat here, hence why that flood zone is really creeping on this side, whereas on that eastern side, those contour lines are quite close together and it's much steeper there, so that water is flowing in. So you can identify this area here, which is actually the cricket club, is probably a not good place for planning, but further up, you've got that access point there with this road from Forest Road. Potentially great area for different planning sites to be scoping for. So that's just another nice use case that you can utilize with these data layers here. I think one last one to show you quickly is Ordnance Survey Open URN. So these are all the different unique property reference numbers on the map too. And I can click on these and see that UPRN. You can actually look up, it's open source data, so you can look up different addresses if you wanted to using that number. I think that's all worth shouting about there, or maybe green spaces too. This is quite new from Ordnance Survey. You can turn on the green spaces on your map as well. So these are different public areas that are open to all, things like playing fields, parks and gardens, cemeteries, and also you can turn on the access points to these different areas too, and they'll give you the type. So we've got a pedestrian here in green, and on this playing field, we've actually got motor vehicle and pedestrian access point too. So I don't know. You could be planning a fun run or a marathon or something and looking at the different routes and access points of different areas. Or again, you might be looking at planning or evaluation and looking at valuing different properties that are, of course, close to these very valuable open spaces, which would affect the value of your properties. Okay, we'll take a pause there. We've covered data layers and we've covered base map navigation there. We'll now go on to defining our boundaries. And there's a couple of things, a couple of methods that you'll be familiar with defining boundaries in LandApp through this route here. Either use template or import data. They'll take you to the same route. You can pick from land registry or using an SBI number, define your boundary from an import from the RPA. One quick thing that I wanted to show everyone that I think as well is a bit of a hidden treasure in LandApp in some cases is where you've got this little button at the bottom, interactive map, that we admit is pretty small and we're looking at making this a lot more discoverable. But at the moment that's turned off. And I've just turned that on and then go to make a plan, but this time we'll go draw freehand. We'll just call this interactive demo. Click done, and then go to draw an area. And we can actually trace these different shapes on the Ordnance Survey master map raster level. And it's actually a snap to line function too. So if you can see, my cursor is actually hugging these different shapes on my map of this building here, which is a really useful tool if you are looking at very quickly in a lot of detail, looking to measure up different features within your estate, within your farm, within your property, like so. We can do another one here. This is the toll house. We can just very nicely trace the whole boundary of this area, like so. And click finish. And we've got those as new polygons on our map that we can handle. We can see what the area and the perimeter is. And maybe want to divide these into certain or categorize those into certain areas. So it's really good for quickly tracing whatever areas you have in detail. And rest assured that you can be confident this is authoritative because it's from Ordnance Survey. It's using that master map data that is up to date and taken from those key data sources from Earth observation, aerial imagery, and field surveying, which is pretty nifty. And yeah, if you didn't know that in LandApp, that you could do that, you do now. But we'll take a moment now instead to get on with those data downloads by importing some larger boundaries from LandApp. So we can create from an existing plan on this page. We could import a file. So if you do use other GIS softwares and have mapping done there, you can import those into LandApp if they're in the right file format, or we could go from the RPA or the land registry. We'll go from the land registry in this case, and this is now brought up our land registry and title layers on our map, which I can just select, and we'll probably go, let's go down on that one. And maybe let's go select these ones too. So you can select multiple, doesn't have to be one. Title boundary. We'll click that there and we'll choose a template type. For this purpose, let's just go really basic and go ownership boundary. And this will effectively just give me a red line of that boundary there and click finish. And there we go. We've got that. I can divide those up. I could give them a buffer. I could tot up the areas. So if I hold down my shift button like so and click on multiple features at the same time, it will actually select them all. And I can just quickly tot up the total area of all these polygons here, which is just over 30 hectares. Or we can do our drag and select button, which is always a pleasure to show as it's quite new and useful. So it's that button there, drag to select, like so. And that selected everything for me, giving me that same area value, which is great. Starting with, I think we can go with the field boundaries data download, which we access here. So click new, below, import data, download data. And there's a whole different range of different data downloads and tools available in this page, going from vegetation data to agroforestry designs, a slope identifier available in our standard subscription, which is really cool. Whole range of hidden gems. It's these top two from Ordnance Survey that we'll be focusing on with field boundaries and master map topography layer. Starting with Ordnance Survey field boundaries, and to set this up, it's the same in both those data downloads. We'll start by selecting our defined area. We'll go with the one that we just made with ownership boundary. We could, if we wanted to, create a frame, which will take me to this square. I can edit that as much as I like and give that a move around. So if you do want to just a nice, neat rectangle or square of the data download, you can do that in this method, but we'll just go with choosing the plan in this case. And give it a name, so I'll call it OS field boundaries. And we can cut features or hold features. I will explain that in the master map demo, I think. And we've got a calculation for how much that will cost for our license. So this is a licensed product, meaning when I purchase this, it would be owned by me and available to me for my use, business purposes, for a 12-month period. And I'll just click download now, give it a code, and click non-billable in this case, and just go back to my map whilst that's downloading. Whilst that's doing its thing, I can actually take you to a page in LandApp called Data Purchases, which will actually show me all the different data purchases that I've purchased in LandApp, including Ordnance Survey field boundaries and Ordnance Survey master map topography layer. So in terms of those 12-month licenses that you purchase when you download this data, you can go back to this page and view those licenses here, which we generate automatically for you in LandApp. And that is just downloaded like so. And you'll be given this page. It's kind of the same format for every purchase. You've got the customer name, the purchase reference, when the license starts, so the 30th of May in this case, its duration and its end date, what the product is, etc. And we've got a link to Ordnance Survey's user terms here, which is, yeah, streamlined. You can get that data instantly, basically, without having to worry about it too much. It's worth also saying that these licenses, if you purchase these in an organization account in LandApp, so if you're in a standard or professional organization, the license that you purchase belongs to the company that you're purchasing it from, i.e. anyone else in your company is included within this license. So it can be shared with your colleagues for different projects. It can also actually be shared for if you've got subcontractors helping out with your projects with your permission, they can use that data to under this license. So it's really worth pointing that out there, that it's at a company level, whereas in a pay-as-you-go free account, it wouldn't be that case in LandApp. So we'll just give this a refresh and see if we've got, and we do, we have our field boundaries that have now come up on our map. So now it's showing me all those different boundary features that I mentioned at the start. From, we click on this here, we've got a wooded strip, which I think is, I know it's the same in others, but here we've got tree canopies, we've got hedgerows. Oh no, we don't in that case. Let me go on to that in a sec. I think these have got to be hedges, but they're not assigned in this case. I'll have to look into that. But you can see we've got a nice breakdown of all the defined boundaries on our map. This is particularly useful, A, if you want a really detailed, accurate view of the different breakdown of boundaries, including man-made features such as stone walls, but it's also very useful if you perhaps don't have an SBI number and you're importing from the RPA, which would break down your field parcels from their point of view at least. This is a really good option to have this quite instantly and quickly in detail, which is awesome. And we also, it's worth mentioning too, that from LandApp, this generates a healthy hedgerow survey map too from that data that we've just downloaded. And these are showing all of it, specifically hedgerows on your map that then you can then use in this template to go and survey all these hedgerows in our mobile app in the Healthy Hedgerows Survey template. And included within that is all the different conditions from the People's Trust for Endangered Species, H1, H2, and the different hedgerows conditions that you can survey as well. So it's giving you a jump start with that too, which is pretty, again, great for streamlining. Brilliant. I'm conscious of time in 5 minutes. I'm just very quickly going to download the Ordnance Survey master map data just to show you that too. And that's going by the same steps, master map topography layer. We'll look at the ownership boundary again. We'll give it OS master map as the name. And again, we've got the pricing. So it's 30 hectares. We're in a fairly rural area. So that's come to about £212 in terms of how the costs for a master map are divided up. It's in 3 different categories. In urban areas where there's a lot more detail in the different buildings, etc., it would be more expensive. Whereas looking at rural and moorland areas, they're cheaper. And we're in quite a cheap, a rural area here. So it's come to that cost. We'll just go back to our map like so. And this should be very quick in how this is downloaded, which I'll just refresh. Like so, in an instant, we've got our master map layer now. So as you can see, we've got an interactive, 2 new template or plan layers, which are interactive in what we can click on, all these different shapes, and a breakdown of what they are in Ordnance Survey's classification. So here we've got mixed woodland, we've got agricultural land, and we've got this fantastic detail of the different buildings that are present on our map too. So we've got this building in a kind of a yellow, mustardy colour, man-made, so this would probably be the drive. Another mixed woodland here, road or track. Do we have any ponds or inland water? Oh, we have a tiny bit up here as well. We've also got a pond. Any ponds or inland water, it's really detailed in terms of the shapes of what it can generate too, which is a massive benefit as well in terms of looking at that accuracy and enhancement in that accuracy again. We can divide this up into different ways. We can manage this, we can label it in whatever way we want. What I think is a really powerful tool to do with this, before you do anything with the master map, is generate a report. And you can do that by clicking that button up here, add a plan, and we'll go Ordnance Survey master map. And very quickly, I can actually get a breakdown, a tabled breakdown of all those different features within my map, and a total count too. So just looking at buildings on this top line, the counts, and that's the number of features within the map, we've got 40 buildings totaling 0.22 hectares, and that's 0.72% of our entire map. Likewise, for agricultural land, 24 hectares, natural, so woodland and scrub, etc. We've got a breakdown there. So this is a really useful tool if you're in planning, if you're looking at natural capital assessments, or just a kind of basic asset register, if you like, of what sits within your boundary. This is a fantastic way of doing that. And you can download that table too into Excel, like so. Okay. Well, taking a pause there, I realise this is a bit of a whistle-stop tour, and we're doing all right for time. I think in this last case, I'll very quickly just show how to manage prints using Ordnance Survey base maps in Land App, and then we'll get to the Q&A. To generate a print, we'll click this button here and click New Frame. If I've already created a frame, I can click on that, and we'll get taken to this page. I can change my paper size if I want to. We'll just go default A4 landscape. We can go bigger or smaller if we want. We can print everything that I can see. So I've got this box with these 4 boxes on the end, and I can edit that in a different scale. Or I could also do print at fixed scale, which will basically, I won't be able to move the size now, and it'll just be moving that frame like that with the box in the middle. Let's go print everything I can see on auto scale. I can look at the scale itself as well as the border. I quite like using narrow because you get maximized space, but you could go wide or normal. And we can choose our base map. So looking at OpenStreetMap as well as blank, these are free, and we see the cost at the bottom there. But when we get into Ordnance Survey base maps, and we can choose from those 3 Ordnance surveys that are available, we can actually see what the cost is. And this is, again, also a licensed product. So this is actually a purchase for a 12-month period. And I can go back to this print frame anytime I like and print a limited amount of times using this area and this base map. And also, it's worth mentioning too, standard and professional users receive a 20% discount on printing costs as well. Go to customize print. We get taken to this page. We've got the watermark of Land App at the moment, but once we purchase it, that would have gone. We can give it a header. Let's call it OS Master Map May 25. Put that up there. Get it a footer OS webinar at the bottom, like so. We can add a legend into one of 4 corners here. Just on legends, I can increase the font size if I like, by or text size even, by clicking that button here. Let's go size 18. And I can actually also edit the legend items by clicking that button here, which will be taken to this menu. If there are any items on there that I don't want, I can just turn those off using the eye, like so. Just reduces that a bit, cleans it up. And if we're all happy with that, before I go to print, I can actually save this template here. So irrespective of the base map, I can actually save all these titles, how the legend is set up in terms of font size and where it is, where my logos are, where my north arrow is facing. I can just save that like so. And click save. And that will apply to my organization as well if I'm in an organization account. So when I go back, I could just go to that saved template and that will just load that up all for me, like so. And if we're happy with that, let's go into color and click buy now. Give it the demo code on billable, and that's rendered for me. So I've bought it, that watermark is gone. Whilst it hasn't actually prepared fully yet, it's given me a snapshot of what my print is going to look like, which, as you can see, really nice, clean, professional, and it's got that detail that we want to provide through Ordnance Survey data. Great. Q2, I think we can stop there because we do want to save a good amount of time for the Q&A. So I'll just go back to my slideshow and head over to my notes page. So we do have a couple in, which is fantastic. From this top one here, please can I touch on the OS Open UPRN data layer and its uses? How does it work with what three words or postcodes? Is it a new one for me, but others may be well familiar? Martin Steer. Thank you, Martin. In terms of this, I think Dan's best place to come in on this one. Whilst I'm familiar a lot with what three words, less so with Open UPRN. So Dan, I don't know if you're happy coming off from mute and
Yeah.
just helping with this answer. Thanks.
Thanks, Will. Yeah, so Martin, I answered it in the chat, but basically, yeah, every property in the country is now given a unique property reference number, and that number is unique to the property. And so you can take that number to external tools and copy and paste it in. So, for example, I put in the chat the Find My Address search. So you can basically, if you want a building and you want to know its exact address and postcode, you can take that onto that tool. We, being the product team, are looking at basically integrating that with a couple of other things. For example, you can get energy performance certificates as well for buildings. So it's just a really nice, unique code that's joining a lot of property relevant data together. And we've only just introduced it the first step, so we're getting to grips with it as well. But it means that you can take it to your energy performance certificate search, or as I put on the chat, that Find My Address search, and get the exact address for one building or many buildings as well. And I think the data layer report, which I don't think will probably show it, if you ran it for a certain area, you can extract all the UPRNs for a certain boundary and therefore do that en masse as well. But hopefully that's answered your question, Martin.
Great. Thanks. I learned something new there too. Next question from Tom Ward Adam. Is the purchase boundary data more accurate than the RPA data on each SBI? I would probably say that it is more accurate. Going by the updates from Sophie in the webinar last week, she shared that Ordnance Survey has got much better in updating their data more regularly, and also from the data sources. It's using Earth observation, so satellite data, using aerial imageries taken from drones. They're obviously quite closer to the ground, and also a lot of historic field surveys too. Whereas without trying to touch on the RPA data, I'm not sure that's updated or generated at the same level. So I would probably say Ordnance Survey data is more accurate there.
Yeah. So just to jump in on that. So basically, I can't remember the exact date, but the Ordnance Survey gave the Rural Payments Agency under a license, I think maybe 2019, their master map parcels, which isn't entirely master map, but like a derived data set, which is what you can get through the SBI number. But since then, master map has got more accurate. So they've kind of slightly been diverging, unless you've been declaring to the Rural Payments Agency a change. So if you declare a building or a new woodland, for example, that will update. But master map is updated daily now, so it's definitely the source of truth. So if you need an accurate representation of the area, every feature, master map's the one. However, the RPA import, landowners and those representing those landowners can access that SBI number import as well, which is free of charge, but it is slightly less accurate based on just that divergence in the last 6 or so years.
Great. I think there was a second question from Martin relating to that. Will the RPA eventually use OS field boundary data set to map their hedges, losing the count of the number of times having to do REL1 forms, add hedges? So I don't know, there could be potentially a positive step in maybe integrating and streamlining those two bodies there in terms of the data. I think from our point of view, absolutely as much streamlining and integration, and I guess a more consistency in a common data language that can be created in this quite large ecosystem of different use cases and people needing this data, then yes, I think that would be a great thing, Martin.
Yeah. And just to add to that, we've mentioned it to the RPA before. This new data set has come out, but at the moment, I'm not aware of any conversations with the RPA getting access to that for part of the hedgerow replacement. Although land use framework, for example, might change that. A big part of the land use framework was what data is currently available that would be really useful for farmers to have free access to. And we put the field boundaries on our response. But at the moment, it's a premium product ran and released by Ordnance Survey. So you do need to have a license for it as it stands.
Okay. Got one from Neil. Thanks for sending a question in, Neil. Referring to flood zones, what usage potential is there already in play for insurance companies and financial institutions to determine high-low risk areas? I think that's, yeah, definitely happening at the moment um, with different companies out there. We do have users that are using LandApp for that exact purpose, Neil. Not only flood zones, but there will be others in there. That yeah, it's all coming under that kind of umbrella of assessing either different constraints or opportunities to that's built into a strategy, commercial strategy, to help
Yeah.
improve customer
And
offers.
just on that, Will, the flood zones that are currently on land apps, so we have that flood zone layer that Will showed, which is the Environment Agency's risk of flooding over the next 30 and 100 years. So being in those areas are showing areas that are likely to flood in the next 30 to 100-year events. However, they're happening more commonly. We also have wetlandscapes, which is definitely worth having a look at because that's more around flood path or flow pathways across land. So if you're interested in that, um, looking at the wetlandscapes data layer to show you where exactly water is flowing across fields. But I think the third thing to say, particularly if you are from a financial or a banking institution, we have a new product that's just gone live called Nature Risk and Resilience Reporting. And that provides you with an objective way of getting those flood risk scores across a portfolio. So, for example, it's being used by some of the supermarkets we're working with and some of the banks we're working with as well. It's just us quantifying the likelihood of flooding from different farms or different estates based on those data layers and a couple of others.
Great. Um, Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Neil. One more question from Andrew. When you did the interactive demo, snapping on that building outline, the dimensions look quite precise. Can you comment on its accuracy? What's the data source and tolerance? So in that section, I was tracing that outline from the Ordnance Survey master map layer. So in terms of the accuracy, we can be pretty confident that it's very good. And yeah, that's the data source from there, and it's as we've mentioned, being updated live through some pretty good data sources from satellite imagery and aerial imagery too. So rest assured, Andrew, it's going to be pretty accurate. Whilst we can't be confident that always 100%. And there's things like potential changes that might be happening that aren't quite updated might come up, but we can be pretty confident that it's very accurate. Yeah. Um, I think I can't see any more on my list, Dan. So I think that's all for
I think
questions.
there's one more, I think, from Phil, Will, which was
Uh,
just when using the snapped line feature and you're drawing an area like you were showing, if you're kind of going across multiple shapes. So I think your demo, you just showed one shape, but say you're trying to trace three boundaries. I think Phil's articulated a bit of frustration that it doesn't always snap to line. So my top tip for that, Phil, would be just when you're tracing, just click like select, almost lock in that shape before you move to the next shape. So say you're going around one field, click just at the end of that field, then start going around the next, and it will keep following the edge of the parcel. It's when you're trying to do multiple shapes that doesn't know which one you want to go around. So yeah, Phil, just once you're happy with that first section, click to draw the line, and then start going around another field, which will hopefully allow you to continue around, I don't know, a collection of fields or a collection of features on the map.
okay. Thanks, Dan. Yeah, can be quite fiddly at times. So it's a good one, good question to raise there. Um, Thanks, Phil. And I see one more has come in from Stephen around where the wet landscapes data layer, sorry, data download is. So again, you can access that by clicking new and going to that data download data page where if we scroll to the middle, we've got wet landscapes there. So as Dan mentioned, that is going to generate areas on your map where there's going to be high risk of flooding. I think it's a breakdown of three different risk categories from 0.1% chance in annual flooding, 0.01 in annual chance of annual flooding, and one more that I can't quite remember. But it'll also generate different areas that you can place mitigating interventions. So things like woody, leaky dams or more grassy vegetation, things like that. It will suggest where you could place that on your map to mitigate any bad things happening from those high risk areas, which we won't probably don't have time to demo right now, but that's accessible through this data download section here, all based on Environment Agency and England data too. Others worth mentioning while we're here, as we've got time, agroforestry data downloads here. They'll just pre-populate whatever you have on your map or fields with a type of agroforestry plan from linear, kind of infield dispersed, and then orchard as well. A slope identifier, so that will actually show you quite an interactive version of your map and showing different colors where there's more high gradients or lower gradients, just so you see, I guess, the different topography and gradients on your map, which is great, and others in there that I encourage you to have a good play around with. Brilliant. And then Martin again, I see a question. OS data for power cables in the demos doesn't show for me, please. Can you re-show for power cables? Um, so I don't think Ordnance Survey have provided, yeah, we don't have a data layer from Ordnance Survey around power cables. What we do have is if I go to the utilities section in Land App, we've actually got all these national grid data sets here from gas transmission, electricity transmission, etc., as well as overhead lines as well. So those are those overhead cables from, in this case, a few private providers that own that. And if I turn those on, we can see a whole range of different data sets there.
Yeah, just quickly on that expectation management, we are probably removing the underground cables just because we're having a licensing conversation with the provider. So they won't be there for much longer, just because of you have to go to the source of truth if you're doing any digging. So we're just having a conversation with them, but we're probably removing the underground cables network
Okay.
just for transparency.
Um, that's all fine. But that's the answer to your question there, Martin. You can view overhead lines, that's included there from some providers. Great. We've got more questions. We are coming to the end of time. So I think probably a better route perhaps would be to answer these questions after the webinar, I think. Thank you, Phil, John, and Martin again for sending those through. I think it would be, just due to time, a good idea to answer those to you directly after we've finished. But so we can end there. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. It's been a pleasure doing my first webinar for LandApp with you all. And as always, more will be coming, so it would be please look out for those notifications and emails for our next webinar. I think there'll be a bit of a pause during summer whilst we're out doing events and things like that. So hope to see you at some of those too. Thank you again. Thank you for your support and for joining. Bye bye.